Hi, and welcome to another presentation of Family Star Talks with the Experts. My name is Lisa Math, and I'm director of the Family Star program at FND. I'm also a certified recovery peer specialist, and that comes from my lived experience as a parent of a young adult with medical and mental health challenges. So by getting certified, I'm able to utilize all of that lived experience to help support families on their journey. I'm very excited today to have this topic and present it to our families. We're going to be talking about understanding special needs trust. This is a very important topic for families who have children with disabilities. And I'm really thrilled to introduce our speaker and say hello to Nelson Perez. Good afternoon, Nelson. It's great to have you here today.
Good afternoon, Lisa. We're happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and we just can't wait to discuss this with all of our families.
Awesome. And I'm going to be giving you Nelson's background in just a minute. But before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about our organization. So FND started in 1985. We are a nonprofit 501c3 that operates throughout the entire state of Florida. We are able to do that at no cost through the generous funding from the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Health. And that funding allows us to support families, self-advocates, professionals, providers, and educators throughout the state in the special needs world. As I mentioned, we started in 1985. We've been around almost 40 years, and we started in somebody's living room. There were a group of parents who got together to support each other because they too were struggling to get what they needed for their children. And by banding together as a group and creating a community support system, they really were able to expand the reach that they had in the community. And years later, we became a statewide organization. And we are not only recognized for the work we do on a state level, but on a national level as well. We collaborate with all kinds of national providers and agencies, and we do tremendous outreach in that capacity. What is really unique about our organization is that we're family driven and we're also peer driven. That means that almost all of our board of directors and staff members either have their loved one with a disability or have their own experience with a disability. So not only are we bringing the drive to support those families and professionals, but we bring the empathy and compassion that comes with that experience. So I want to just clarify that we are not here as in the role of attorneys, medical professionals, or mental health clinicians. So we are not able to give legal or medical advice, but we will support you on that journey by offering you training and education, information sharing, and programs just like this today that really help to not only support, but empower the families with whom we work. So let me introduce Nelson today, and I'm very excited to be working with Nelson. So Nelson Perez brings a wealth of information to his role as Vice President of Trust Services at FND Trust Services. Since joining the company in 2012, Nelson has played a pivotal role in overseeing all aspects of trust operations. He provides daily guidance and support to the trust staff, ensuring smooth operations and efficacy and efficiency with a client-focused attention to detail. Additionally, Nelson collaborates closely with the attorneys and structured brokers, guiding them from pre-consultation to implementation. Nelson earned his Bachelor of Science in Sports and Business Administration from the University of Tampa and a Master's of Business Administration from Florida International University. A resident of Tampa Bay area, he enjoys spending time with his wife and their two daughters and son, and he is deeply committed to expanding FND's trust services by engaging with prospective clients and their families and underscoring the company's dedication to their mission. So again, welcome, Nelson. Very excited to be collaborating with you on this topic today.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for having us, and we look forward to sharing information with our families and helping spread the message of just how helpful a special needs trust can be in your planning.
Exactly. So let me stop sharing so that we can spend some time talking today and really educating the families that may or may not have any information about special needs trusts. So I want to start at the beginning, and the basic question obviously would be, what is a special needs trust?
Sure, Lisa. So essentially what a special needs trust is, it's a trust that exists pursuant to federal statute that allows you to deposit money into it and have it not be counted as a resource for government benefits purposes. So if you are on what's called means tested benefits, Social Security or Medicaid, there's only so many assets or income you can have to qualify for those benefits. And so when you have a surplus of money or income, the only place that money can go and your benefits be protected is into a special needs trust. So that is the main reason that somebody would set up a special needs trust, is to protect current benefits. Or if you think you'll be eligible for benefits in the future, or you're going to need government benefits, you want to set up a special needs trust. So that way those assets and resources of yours can be protected.
So that would pretty much explain a little bit of the difference between a regular trust and a special needs trust. But is there a very specific difference between those two types of trusts?
Yes, there is. So a special needs trust has certain statutory language that is included with it that makes it exempt for the benefits purposes. So when you deposit money into the trust, like I said, those assets are exempt. There's no income, the income is not counted and the assets are not counted that are within that special needs trust. And so a regular trust would not have that language in it. And so it is not considered a special needs trust. You can have an irrevocable trust or a revocable trust or any other kind of trust in your family planning, but unless it has specific special needs language and meets certain criteria that's been established by the federal government, it will not qualify as a special needs trust. And so that's the main difference. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just set up a trust and it'll be fine. No, you specifically need to set up a special needs trust.
Excellent. I think that's starting right out of the gate. That's really critical information for our families to know. And I think helpful in that they need to really start that conversation. We're going to talk about that today as well. So with the thought of protecting benefits, how does a special needs trust actually improve the quality of those with disabilities?
Sure, that's a great question. So again, just to kind of get down to the beginning, it protects those assets that you have. So I'll use the example of, you know, say we work with a lot of attorneys, as you said in my bio, very kindly, thank you. And so we get a lot of, you know, what you would call a personal injury settlement or a medical malpractice settlement. So in essence, it allows, you know, that beneficiary or client to receive that money, deposit it into their trust, and use it for things that fall outside of their government benefits for their sole benefit. So they don't have to take that money and spend it down or do something with it they don't want to do. So it allows them to, you know, have a resource where, again, if Medicaid can't pay for certain things that are medically needed, they can use that money to pay for it. Or if they just want that money there in the future, right now their Social Security and their Medicaid takes care of all of their needs, and they just want to have a way to have money in an account and have it grow, they can have the money in that special needs trust, and that will give them independence down the road, because if they need something or a long-term need comes up, they will have the resources to go ahead and make that. And if that distribution, you know, qualifies and it's a sole benefit expense, then they will not have to worry about interrupting their government benefits.
Excellent. So I would imagine you would consider this a tool in their advocacy toolbox.
Yes, I would. So, you know, to use another example, you know, we have a lot of families who want to, you know, they may have a special needs child or a special needs, you know, parent, and they want to leave money to them, or they want to do something for them. And sometimes they just don't think about it. You know, my, you know, great uncle might want to leave my disabled child $50,000. And he may just not think about it. He may just leave it to him. Well, unfortunately, if my child gets that money and he's on benefits, he's going to lose his benefits, or, you know, we're going to have to figure out a spend down. And so we help families advocate, you know, for their family and have this in their toolbox, because we literally at FND will set up a, you know, what's called a family pooled fund trust, a third-party trust, and I'll explain the differences later, free of cost. And then you'll have that trust there as a placeholder. So when you have that money that you want to go into it, it's already set up, it's there, it's free to set up. And then it's another tool in your toolbox. And you've already taken care of one of the hardest things, which is that long-term planning piece.
Yeah, that definitely is very difficult for parents and caregivers of children with disabilities. I speak from personal experience, and the idea of having to think in terms of what happens when I'm no longer there to support my loved one. And the idea that we need to make sure that all of those tools are available and set up in advance when everybody can have that conversation. So I definitely appreciate the fact that you're viewing it from that lens.
Yeah, it's important. And, you know, nobody wants to really think about the long-term aspect of it. I get that a lot from families. You know I need to do it, I just don't want to think about it. And they think it's this, you know, kind of overly cumbersome and crazy expensive, you know, process. You know, here, particularly at FND, we try to make it not that. Now, again, with the same caveat that I am also not an attorney, and we don't give legal advice. We do have a joinder agreement for both our first party trust and our third party pooled fund, which I'll explain the differences later, that allows you just to have it, you know, again, as an advocacy tool. You know, we already have the document. It's already been approved by the Social Security Administration. And so you can have it, review it, If you want to have an attorney review it, we always recommend that, but it's already here. We can send that to you upon request, and you've already taken care of one of the future portions of that, which is, sometime in the future, we all want to outlive our children. And so we know at some point, we want to leave money to them, whether it be through life insurance or something like that. And we want to take care of our disabled child or whoever it is. And so we want to just make sure we have that tool in place. We don't have to use it now, in the case of family planning, but it's there in the future, even if it's 20, 30, 40 years down the road. F&D, we've been a nonprofit for, 40 years now, almost 40 years. And the trust services, we've been in business for 25 years now. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary. So we do these a lot. And the reason we do it is to help families take care of that long-term planning mechanism, so they have ease of mind and peace of mind when they're going about their daily lives.
Excellent. A term that comes up often in the conversation of trusts is fiduciary. So can you please explain to our audience what that is and how important that is?
Yes. So essentially what a fiduciary does is they work for you. They don't work for their own benefits. They don't work for the benefit of their company. They don't work for the benefit of their shareholders. They don't work for the benefit of anyone else. A fiduciary's sole responsibility is to you and to your money. And so that's really important when you're out there looking for a trust company, whether it be a trustee, a trust company, a bank, in our case, a nonprofit. You want to make sure they have your best interest in mind, or the best interest of your family member in mind, that you're entrusting them with that money. So if they're going to make decisions that better their organization, that doesn't help you. If they're going to make fiduciary sound decisions that will help the person and serve the whole person, then that's what anyone should be looking for. These dollars, no matter how big, are extremely important to any person or any family. And so you want to make sure they're protected, they're safeguarded, and all the tools are in place, to make sure that happens on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. I love that we're able to explain the nuances for the audience. So people may believe that falsely that a special needs trust is a loophole in the system. Please let them know it's not and why it's not.
This is a federal statute. This was passed back in the early 90s. It's on the Social Security Administration website. This is not a loophole. This was a system set up by the federal government to help people protect their government benefits. They've been in use, like I said, since the early 90s. We've been using them and serving clients with disabilities since 1999. And that tool has never been interrupted. There's no legislation trying to get rid of them. There's nothing like that out there. It seems like a loophole because you think about it and you say to yourself, or on behalf of a family member, I have this pot of money I'm going to put into this entity. All the government tells me, all Medicaid tells me is I can't have this money, I can't have this money, I can't have this money. But all of a sudden I'm going to put it over here, but that's okay. And the answer is yes, it is. It is okay. It's a federal statute, it's federal law. This has been approved again by the federal government, hasn't been touched, since the early 90s. And so, all documents are drafted, whether you have an attorney draft it or use what's called a joiner agreement, are drafted with that in mind. And again, they have that special language in them. And I always ask, if you want to know what that language is, I would consult with an attorney, but that language is in there to make it a special needs trust. And that's why that is protected.
Excellent. Again, all this information is valuable for those on the webinar. So I'm sure people probably have misconceptions about setting up a special needs trust, that as you mentioned earlier, that it's too difficult or it's costly, or what are some of the things that you can dispel, some of the myths you can dispel for those families?
Well, sure. And I'm speaking from the perspective of FND and what we do. Setting up a special needs trust can be costly if you want to, if you need to go to an attorney and do multiple things. And again, we always recommend they review these. But most estate planning or probate attorneys are familiar with special needs trust. Here at Family Network on Disabilities, like I said, we already have the paperwork for you. We have what's called a joiner agreement, which is a pooled special needs trust. And again, we're going to go over those later. And we also have a third-party pool trust. So the document is already in place. And so it's just something that's available to you. They're actually on our website. So you can review them at any time. And so the fact that already exists, you already have one of the main tools there, which is the trust has been drafted. It's there. It's already been approved by, like I said, our joint agreement is approved by the Social Security Administration. It works. We serve, hundreds upon hundreds of beneficiaries every single day. And so, we're just a phone call away. You call us, we'll explain it to you. Again, not legally, but just explain to you what we do, how we do it. And then, if you have any other questions, again, I always say just refer to an attorney and then we'll be glad to help you. But it's not It's not overly cumbersome. And I find sometimes when we're planning for ourselves and we're planning for family, sometimes things just seem overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Everyone in the special needs world, we all want to provide advocacy and tools for everyone. And so this, again, is just a tool. And here at F&D, we're happy to provide as much information as you need to make an informed decision, whether it be for yourself or your family.
So you mentioned looking for a special needs attorney. I want to mention that a little bit later in our presentation, we're actually going to share resources that can help you do that research. So that's critical information we'll be sharing with you as well. What happens if an individual does not set up a special needs trust? An individual with disabilities, I should say, does not set up that trust.
Sure. So, I'll go through two different scenarios. In the scenario of a lawsuit, I get my money, I just get a check, I put it in my own bank account. I'm going to be over that resource limit for Social Security, Medicaid. And so they're going to kick me off my benefits until that money can be spent down. And not only spent down, but spent down on sole benefit expenses that I have to prove to them that I spent that money on. If I spent it on things that are not allowable by Social Security, I may not get my benefits back. And so you want to rely on a professional to help you. And so again, if you deposit that money in your own bank account, or you just say, oh, I'll give it to my sister, or I'll give it to this family member, it's not going to work. You're going to lose your benefits most likely. So, and also, a lot of people don't realize this, you have a duty to report. So if there's what's called a change in circumstance, whether it be an inheritance or a lawsuit or anything like that, you have a duty to report to the government, that you had a change in circumstance. And so when that change in circumstances, that money went into a special needs trust, then that should be protected. And so if you just, and again, in a very innocent way, if you have a family member that, if I have, if my son, I know, grandpa's going to leave him money, and I know he's on government benefits, he's going to need those benefits for the rest of his life. It's up to me to tell grandpa, hey, thank you so much. That's incredibly kind of you to leave that, to our son. However, he has a special needs trust, or I'm going to be setting up a special needs trust, and that's where that money would need to go. Because what we don't want to do, if you're not here and I'm not here, that money goes in, and then he goes into his bank account, or they cut him a check, and he's, he doesn't know what to do, and then he's left scrambling and potentially could lose his benefits. So again, it's just part of that long-term planning mechanism to say, okay, let's get this in place. If it's a family situation, let me talk to my family, let them know how to, what to do with the money or possible inheritance or things like that. If it's my own money, let me seek guidance so that I know I am doing the right thing and that I'm not going to interrupt my own benefits. Or if I know I'm going to need them in the future, I'm not interrupting them as well.
Excellent. And you mentioned the idea of a duty to report. And I think those individuals receiving benefits, whether it's SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, you have a duty to report as well any changes in your circumstances there. So this should be a natural progression. If you have a special needs trust, it's the same concept. You have to have that duty, that reporting done on a regular basis to indicate if you've had a change in household, a change in income and inheritance, any of those things. So it's very much similar in the special needs world as well, with the trusts as well.
Right, exactly. And, I always call it, we all play in the same sandbox. So us and Medicaid, Social Security, we're all in the same arena. We're all operating under the same rules and regulations. And so, people, sometimes, and this is mostly in lawsuits, but sometimes they want to try to get creative. They don't want to have the confines or what they think is the restrictions of a special needs trust. So they'll just think, I'm going to do something different with my money. But, it's your duty solely as an individual or your guardian, if you have a guardian, to report that. So the best thing you could do as an advocacy tool, whether it be for yourself or your family, is to set up a special needs trust. And I always say, whether that's through F&D or through anyone else, the best practice, if you have that qualifying disability, whether you're setting something up for your family or you're setting it up for yourself, to have a special needs trust in place so you don't lose those critical benefits. Because whether it be a small amount of money or a large amount of money, if you have to spend that money out of pocket on medical expenses, it can be gone very, very quickly. We all know how expensive the medical system is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when should somebody start to consider setting up a special needs trust? What does it look like in the process, if you will?
As soon as I always tell people, as soon as you know about it, as soon as you think you may need one, if you're advocating for yourself, and you're able to, some people call it a self-settled, you're able to establish your own special needs trust, start that process as soon as you can. Here at F&D, we don't charge anything until the trust has been established and funded. So we could explain it to you, with our joinder agreement and things like that. But, as soon as you think you might need one, or you meet, in the lawsuit scenario, you meet with your attorney and he says, okay, he or she says you're going to get this amount of money. And then, right away, okay, I have government benefits. I know I'm going to need them forever. Or, this happened to me. I'm now having a qualifying disability. I need to get on Social Security and Medicaid. I'm going to need something set up for me. You want to start that process right away. There's no reason to wait till the end. There's no reason to put it off. And again, if you're planning for a family member and this is something you want to do for them, there's no reason to put it off. I always say there's no better time than the present. Go ahead and start the process now. It doesn't all have to be done in one day. It doesn't get completed, like that quickly, but on our end, we can literally open an account overnight, have it open, ready to fund and things like that. So we try to make it as stress-free and as least cumbersome as we possibly can. And so I say, again, as soon as start the process.
Excellent.
And again, we're going to go over some tools later and some resources where you can begin to look around and, find those things that you may need in the future.
Excellent. So speaking of a trust and when to start it, how does one fund it?
So there's multiple ways you can fund it. In the example of a lawsuit, you get the lawsuit, you can fund it with the proceeds from the lawsuit, net of attorney's fees and costs. If, I know I'm going to leave life insurance money or, other type of money to a family member, I can have it, I can tell my insurance company in the life insurance example, instead of my payee being, my child just in their name, it would be my child's special needs trust. So I would tell them in those riders, if you have annuities, variable or fixed annuities, or other things that are going to pay out after your death, you have death benefits that are going to pay out, those can all go into a special needs trust. So again, it's just planning it out, understanding where it's going to go and putting the mechanisms in place.
I guess if an individual family has a lot of assets, it would probably be best to bring in a financial planner to discuss how to transfer all those assets over as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that can be involved in these. You have financial planners, you have, tax experts, whether it be a CPA or a tax attorney, you have estate planning attorneys. So yeah, if you're looking at large sums of dollars and large amounts of assets that you're going to pass on to a person with special needs, you definitely want to seek legal counsel and put all those, a team of people together, and Family Network on Disabilities or any other trustee, whether it be nonprofit or for-profit, can be part of that team to help put all that planning together.
Interesting. So we're talking about setting up a trust fund. We're talking about how to fund it. Who can oversee it?
So in the example of a pool trust, and we'll get into these examples, the specific kinds of trust later. For a pool trust, the only entity that can administer a pool trust is a not-for-profit. So in this case, Family Network on Disabilities is the trustee. In lawsuits, most of the time, the court wants what you would call a corporate trustee, whether that be a nonprofit, a bank, or a trust company. In the example of, either you're setting it up for yourself or outside of a lawsuit, or you're setting it up for a family member, then again, you can still have those same entities be the trustee, or a family member can be the trustee. So if I'm just going to set up a trust for myself that I know I want to have, but I know I don't want to oversee my own money, and I can't be my own trustee. My mom can establish a trust for me. Or if my mom knows she's going to leave me money, she can set up a third-party trust for me. And so, but yeah, that's how you would do it.
Okay, so as long as we're starting to move into that concept of different trusts, let's go ahead and dig deeper in that. If you could share the different types of trusts.
Absolutely. So there's two main types of trusts. One's called first-party special needs trust, and the other is called third-party special needs trust. So a first-party special needs trust is my money for my benefit. And so to bring up the lawsuit again, I have a settlement. I had, a medical malpractice or personal injury. I'm getting X amount of dollars. I'm going to put that money. That's my money that I've received at this award. I'm going to put it into this trust for myself. Same if I have, other benefits that are going to pay out that may kick me off my government benefits, pensions, things I've accumulated over the years. That's my money. I want to establish my own trust for myself. That's a first party because it's your money. So a third party, think of it like a third party payment. A third party trust is my money for someone else. So I want to leave an inheritance to my disabled child, or their grandparent does, or their aunt or their uncle or anyone else. That's my money that's going to them. So that's what's considered third party money. And so that instance, I would want to set up a third party special needs trust. And then, I used the phrase pooled earlier.
Mhm.
And so FND operates both their first party trust and their third party trust within, we do individual trust, but we also have pool trust. And the only difference is they're all special needs trusts, first party or third party, but the assets are pooled for investment purposes. So I always tell people to think of it similar to a 401k. So the money is pooled together, it's invested together. Everyone gets their own account number, their own statement. Their statement is in their name. It's their money. It's their own account number sent to them directly, no one else's. And then, but because of that, we're able to make a greater diversity of investments and have a greater ability to serve the general public because of the way we can invest. You know, if you have a very, very, very small amount of money, it's very hard to get, you know, a professional money manager or someone else to manage it. You know, a lot of banks have thresholds and things of that nature. So by pulling the assets together, it allows us again to have that greater diversity of investments and hopefully realize a greater return for our clients in the future.
Excellent. So you mentioned that a pool trust has to be run by a nonprofit. I think that's important information for our families to hear, because there's these assumptions that all trusts are managed by a trustee that's maybe a family member, but that's not the case. There's also, although you didn't bring it up, but if an individual's over the age of 65, although that's not the population we serve, we want you to understand that they are only allowed to have a pooled trust. So that's
Yes,
important.
and that's a very important distinction. So if you're doing any, if you happen to, you know, be here with us and you're doing any planning for, you know, an elderly relative or somebody you know is going to be aging into that age, yeah, when you are over the age of 65, the only type of special needs trust you qualify for is a pooled trust. So just keep that in mind. You know, as Lisa said, most of the population we serve is children and young people. However, that is an important tool to know if you ever need this for, you know, a parent or a grandparent or anything like that. Over the age of 65, it has to be a pooled trust. And so there's just two main, you know, pooled and then an individual trust. Just to explain it real quick, that's its own entity. It's always drafted by an attorney. It exists on its own. It has its own tax ID number, and it's its own account that's set up just for that trust entity itself. And usually people ask me, what's the difference? I usually say larger dollar amounts have a trust drafted. An individual trust may be better. You know, because, you know, the cost of administration may be a little bit lower, and also it can be a little more customized, you know, where the pool trust is, you know, one document, it's one size fits all. So if you want flexibility, and again, not flexibility with the benefits, that is what it is, but, you know, maybe you want some certain language in there or things of that nature. That's the main difference.
And interesting. So, the term payback trust, can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Sure, and that speaks to the differences too. So in an individual trust, you know, Medicaid is always the first payer. So, you know, I know we brought up the phrase loopholes earlier and things like that. Well, though this is legal, so Medicaid says, you know, because we're going to let you do this and we're going to let you put money in the special needs trust while you're living, and we're going to still pay all your benefits and pay your health expenses, and then you can use this trust as a supplement to that. When you pass away, we're gonna have a lien on that trust. And so that money, whatever's in the trust at the time, can potentially go back to Medicaid. So if I have a individual special needs trust and I owe Medicaid, say $100,000, and I have $300,000 left in my trust, when I pass, $100,000 of that money has to go to Medicaid. And then the rest will go to my family or heirs at law, or however, if I did estate planning or had a will or anything like that, you know, that's all that would happen there. The reverse, you know, unfortunately, is that if I have, in that same example, I have $100,000 in my trust and my lien is $300,000, all of the money left in my special needs trust will go to Medicaid. Now, Medicaid would say, most people don't like hearing that. That's the cost of doing business. You know, we hope if your trust is set up during your lifetime, you get the maximum enjoyment out of it that you can. We try to give you as much advocacy and tools and distributions and things that we can possibly do so you can enjoy your trust. It is your sole benefit trust. We want to see you happy and use the money in any way you can. That's allowable, you know, within the trust and within government benefits. But, you know, that's just the one caveat there. In a pool trust, the money is retained by the nonprofit. So when a beneficiary passes away, we send Medicaid notice that the beneficiary has passed. And then because we are a nonprofit, we are allowed to then what's called retain the funds. And then those funds are used to advocate for persons with disabilities, which is Family Network on Disabilities mission. I always say you can go on our website. If you go on the FND website, you can see all the wonderful advocacy we're able to do for people. And we really, it's important to distinguish, we're a true nonprofit. We truly serve people every single day. So that money that the pool trust is retaining is going to provide services to potentially your family members, your friends, and serving the greater community.
Excellent. I love the way you phrase that. And as we finish up this webinar at some point in the next few minutes, we're going to share with you some of the ways that we are doing that advocacy and support for those families so that you can see how those dollars are really being maximized. So I know that every special needs trust has some operating costs, if you will. What can an individual who's going to set up a special needs trust expect to be some of the fees that they'll see?
So sure, most trust companies have, what they would call a one-time setup fee. That's their cost to, set up your trust internally, open the file, assign, say an administrator or the point of contact for your file, and just have everything set up, sending letters out, welcome information, things of that. So that's a one-time cost doing business. And then there's a what's called a trustee fee. So there's a percentage of that money that the trustee is going to collect as their fee for that annual administration of the trust. So whether some trust companies collect that money monthly, some collect it quarterly, some collect it annually. And I always tell people, one of the first things you should do when you call a trust company, ask them what their fees are. They should be able to disclose this to you right over the phone. So everyone is different. I can't speak to, what other trust companies charge. But if you want to know what FND charges, feel free to call our office at any time and we're happy to disclose that information to you. But generally, most trust companies, again, it's that one-time, setup or administrative fee, and then just an ongoing annual fee or quarterly or monthly, just based on the assets in the trust.
So is it based on a sliding fee scale, or is there a flat administrative fee?
Well, again, so everyone can be different. Some tier it. So they say, from 0 to, this amount, we charge this percent. Some, from this amount to this amount, we charge this percent. Some just say, so it's a sliding scale or, a tiered fee schedule. Ours is just based on the amount and the size. So, if you just know you're going to open a trust, if you want to call us and just get that specific fee schedule, we'll give it to you. Also important to distinguish, I'm just speaking to FND, we don't charge any minimum fees and we don't have any minimum deposits. And so a lot of trust companies will charge you, say $1,000 a year, no matter what, or $2,000. We don't do that. We also have no hidden fees. So that's always important too. When you're getting that fee schedule, just, ask them, hey, are there any other fees that you're going to charge my account during the year? Do you charge me for deposits? Do you charge me for phone calls? Do you charge me for communication? If the trust is going to hold real estate, some trust companies will charge more for that. So just make sure, anything you think, may come up in the lifetime administration, always ask. There's never a wrong question. There's never a bad question. You're providing advocacy for either yourself or a loved family member or a friend. And so you just want to make sure you're getting all of that information you can. And again, because it's such a good advocacy tool, you want to have all of that information at your disposal when you're making an informed decision.
Excellent. So just as we're coming to the end of this and we're starting to wrap up this conversation, Nelson, I know our caregivers often think of the here and now when we're trying to navigate systems and services for our loved ones with disabilities. We're always thinking in the present. We're always in the moment because there's so much to manage. But really, the focus of this presentation is to think in terms of what the future looks like for your loved one. With that said, maybe you can sort of sum up what we've talked about in the last few minutes in a few sentences to kind of wrap up and give somebody something to take away from this presentation.
Sure. When I talk to families, whether it's on these webinars or in person, I always just say the thing I want you to take away is this is an advocacy tool. It's not overly cumbersome. It's federally mandated. It's not a loophole. It will do the things we say it will do. And you want to have it at your disposal. If you need those benefits, and most people who are on benefits, need them because they got them for a reason, you want to make sure you can maintain them, or you plan for the future of those benefits for a family member or yourself. And so there's no better time than the present. We already have the documents in place. Other nonprofit, special needs trust companies do as well. And so you can start now and really have that peace of mind knowing that, hey, I've already done this. Nobody wants to think about what's going to happen 20, 30, 40 years from now, maybe 10 years from now. It's an incredibly hard thing to do. And that's one of the harder conversations I have with families every day is like, hey, mom and dad or whoever takes care of the child sometimes thinks, what's going to happen when I'm gone? Because nothing can replace them as far as what they do every day, because most of our parents are working 24/7 to advocate for their child with disabilities or their family member with disabilities. But at least peace of mind, whether it has been through life insurance or some kind of annuity or just your own advocacy, you'll have that money there for them in the future. And that's just one less thing you have to worry about, because your day is stressful, your day is hard. And so you don't have to go to bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with their money when I'm gone? You already know it's been set up. You have that peace of mind, and you can go about your day at least having one less thing to worry about.
Excellent. I love the way you framed that. And I can tell you, I learned a lot today in this presentation just from understanding the nuances and the differences and the different types of trusts, and understanding these are federally protected documents, and they're going to follow the federal statutes. So that this is not just something an attorney writes up and decides how to handle. I love the idea that this is used as an advocacy tool to really make sure that our loved ones' lives are being enriched. So there was so much shared here today. I'm really grateful for this. I know that we have some resources you want to share with our group, so let me go ahead and share those right now. All right, so if you just take a minute and share these resources, that'd be great, Nelson.
Sure. So FND Trust Services, little self-promotion, that's our website. So you can go on there, you'll see all of our trust, our CEO, our trust administrators, and our whole staff. And there's information on both, first party trust, third party trust, our pool trust, and our individual trust. So all of those categories I gave you today, there's information, kind of questions and answers on there. And there actually is a section, if you ever run into it, of non-special needs trust. So if you see that and you're like, what is this? They're just, we do serve some of those, just very rarely. The American College of Trust and Estate Counsel was established by attorneys, and it's a resource center. It kind of says it there in the link, but there's videos and educational tools about understanding special needs trusts, what they are, and finding an attorney potentially that can help you draft those documents for you or your loved one. The Special Needs Alliance is similar. It's a more robust. A lot of our clients, families, even anyone can go to the Special Needs Alliance. Again, it gives you access to trust companies in every state, nonprofits. It also gives you access to attorneys in every state who draft trusts. So the Special Needs Alliance is a great resource if you want to check them out. ABLE. So I know a lot of you watching this webinar probably have heard of ABLE Trust. We don't do those. We don't administer those. But if you ever have a question about what an ABLE Trust is, how it works, and also how it could work within your special needs trust as well, I would go to the ABLE National Resource Center and check them out. And each state has its own different administrator for ABLE. So just specifically whatever state you're in, feel free to check out their specific trust administrator for the ABLE account.
Excellent. So I think it's really important that we are talking about these resources first and foremost, because we want to make sure we're finding the right person to work with so that we have those relationships established. But also we want to make sure that they're legitimate. We don't want to just find somebody in a phone book and decide to do a trust. So I think these are great resources. Of course, we support the decisions of all of our families that make the decision to use any special needs trust, a company, but certainly FND Trust Services is happy to support you in your journey. They would be more than happy to reach out to you and speak with you if you give us a call, and I'm going to give you that number. So as we're wrapping up, again, Nelson, this was fabulous. I not only learned, but I'm sure many people on this presentation have taken away quite a bit to think about, if not to pursue and move forward in the direction of starting a special needs trust. And we want to talk about how, I think Nelson had mentioned earlier, the idea that because FND Trust Services is a nonprofit, and that money that is left to the trust services is used to advocate for special needs. This is where this all happens, at the FND program side. So I want to share with you some of the work that we're doing here on the program side. So as you can see in this graphic, we have quite a few departments. We have 3 parent training information centers as mandated by the IDEA law, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So that actually is our federal law that oversees how all of the special needs dollars in the school districts are administered and managed. Every state is required by the IDEA law to have at least 1 parent training information center. Florida, because of its size, has 3, and FND is proud to have all 3 grants. So we are fortunate in that we can cross promote and share resources and share dollars to really maximize those grants for the students in all of our 67 school districts. So you can see on the graphic there, we have Poppin, which is Parents Offering Parents Information and Networking. That's the northern part of the state of Florida. We have Parent Support Network, that is the southwest and central part of the state of Florida. And then Parent Education Network, which is the southeast and central part of the state of Florida. All three of those work with families throughout the 67 school districts that have children that may be at need of special needs services, have currently are receiving special needs services, whether or not you need support or guidance to understand your rights and due process. Our staff would be more than happy to support you. The Family Star Grant is the one that's administered through HRSA, which is the Health Resources Services Administration through the U.S. Department of Health. So that's the one that I oversee. We support families from birth to age 20 that have children from birth to age 26 with any type of disability. So that's complex medical condition, special healthcare needs, developmental disabilities, and mental health challenges. We work to support them and help them to understand their rights, understand the systems they're involved with, to know how to advocate and work collaboratively with these providers, and really just empower the families. As I mentioned, we have our trust services, which is a separate division from our program department. And we also have programs that are geared for special populations, such as dads raising children with disabilities. I also want to encourage you to go on our website, www.fndusa.org. We have hundreds of printable resources that you can take to meetings, collaborations, providers, professionals that you're working with for your child and loved one, and help them to empower you to understand and work effectively, because it is a process, and we want to really let you know that you have rights when you are meeting with these professionals. We're also very active on social media. We have 7 Facebook pages. We're on TikTok and Instagram. We also have on our website, we have a social stories department where you can, on the drop down under the information hub, you can print out social stories that are good for children with communication challenges and that are overly sensitive to environmental change. We also have a sound bank. So we have recordings of close to 50 different sounds in home, out of home, in classroom environments to help desensitize children that have sensory issues so that they can hear it in a safe environment, know how to be appropriately stimulated by it as opposed to overstimulated, and then they can regulate themselves when they're out in the community. Great resources that you're not necessarily going to find in other places. And again, we have modules on our website that you can educate yourself with as well. Finally, if you believe F&D or even our trust department might be of service to you, I'm going to encourage you to call the 800 number here, which is 800-825-5736. If it is for program support and special needs support in the school districts or with the health care system, we will assign you a staff person. If you're looking for information about the trust, they will guide you in that direction as well. And with that, I am going to stop sharing. Again, Nelson, this was fabulous. I am very thrilled that we did this presentation. I've been wanting to do this for our families for a long time. I know this is valuable information. I learned a lot. I'm sure the families watching did as well. I can't thank you enough for your time and your efforts on behalf of our families, and great to have you here today.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. It was great being here. It was great, implying this or telling people about this information about special needs trusts, what they are, what they do, and some common misconceptions, and just hopefully providing a little piece of education to everyone who's watching. Again, as Lisa said, if you have any questions, feel free to call us at any time. We're happy to answer them. And we wish you the best in your planning and putting that advocacy tool in place for you, either yourself or your family member, or your loved ones.
Excellent. Thank you to everyone on this presentation. We hope you'll join us again in the future for another Family Star Talks with the Expert. Thanks and have a great day.